Rob on the mic, spitting truth from the heights. Queens unite under stadium lights. Bright nights, 7 train rides. Dreams born in the real hum. Brooklyn to Queens, yeah, we all about that outcome. This our time, this our cheer. Mets talk loud, bring the hype, make it clear. From the boroughs to the field, this our year. Queens in the house, let the world hear. From Flushing Meadows, echoes bounce off the bat. Rob calls, hit the mic, snaps like a thunderclap. Home runs over bridges, no gaps in the story. Mets rise, reclaiming the glory. 7 the city, blue and orange army swarm. Summer vibe electric, love in every form. From Biggie's blocks to Flushing's heartbeat. Our anthem loud, no retreat. This our time, this our cheer. Mets talk loud, bring the hype, make it clear. From the boroughs to the field, this our year. Queens in the house, let the world hear. The apple pops in the outfield, city of dreams. Rob's voice over static, Mets on every stream. White lines mapped out the future, vividly. From shade to city, the journey's never gimmicky.
What's up, Mets fans? Welcome back to another Mets Talk Live right here on the channel and on X. And we are 2 weeks out from pitchers and catchers and 3 weeks out from the first spring training game in Port St. Lucie, Florida, as we are getting our roster finalized over the next couple of weeks. A couple of free agents, a couple of possibilities of maybe another trade in the works that could possibly go down before spring training or even during spring training. And obviously spring training gets a little cut short because of the WBC, and that's something that Met fans have to worry about yet again, when we all know what happened a couple of years ago with Edwin Diaz and blowing out his knee while celebrating for Team Puerto Rico. And that is where we are a little worried about some guys that are playing in the WBC, but we'll get into that in a little bit right now. But remember, guys, 2 weeks away from pitchers and catchers, it's starting to feel, well, not really, because if you are, I mean, most of this country from like Texas all the way to the East Coast, you got snow. Some got ice. And a lot of us are either snowed in or kind of just have bad weather, or you live down south and you got bad weather and you're basically in a standstill in the state where I am right now in the south right now. It's kind of like a standstill right now because the south really doesn't know how to prepare for even a little storm. But most of you guys up north in the Northeast, I know, got pummeled with a ton of snow, so be safe. I know it's tough. It sucks. We're always used to it, but still, it's all about taking care of what you got to take care of. So let's get into the baseball part of it. The faces you see on the screen right now, Met fans: Baty, Benge, Mauricio, Vientos. These are guys that are either going to be a big part of this team in 2026, or they're going to be a big asset, possibly, to get other guys to help this team. I did a video, 2 days ago, in regards to Brett Baty and the possibility of him getting traded. The last time we heard David Stearns talk so much about a player, about where they're going to use him, was Jeff McNeil. Now, Brett Baty and Jeff McNeil are 2 totally different players. They're, in different parts of their career. But when David Stearns hypes up a player like he has been with Brett Baty, talking about he's going to play left, then first, and be the big utility guy or the super utility guy, makes me feel like Brett Baty could be used in a trade. Now, I did the video about Matt Brash, a guy from the Seattle Mariners, where, obviously there's a hole in Seattle at third base. Brett Baty would fit perfectly there. It would be a match for both teams, considering the fact that the Mets have one more available spot in their bullpen to get a legitimate arm and solidify their bullpen even more, instead of making Dylan Ross just throwing him in there and seeing what he does. Matt Brash is a really good arm. He had a really good season, throwing 53 games last year out of the bullpen, 2.47 ERA, really good reliever. Not saying that the Mariners would do it, but both teams fit well on what they need. Brett Baty can fill in at with the Mariners at third base. And obviously Brash is a guy that can go right into the Mets bullpen, and he can be a setup man. He can be a seventh inning guy, sixth inning guy. He's all over the place. Can even close every now and then if need be. Not saying, and this is a guy that loves Brett Baty. I was one of his biggest supporters even when he was failing. I love Brett Baty, but I'm also not naive and get emotionally attached to players when I could see avenues of getting this team better where it needs to get better. For all the people that are like, oh, how can you trade Brett Baty? And listen, guys, with over 8,000 views on that video, the amount of comments that people saying, why would you trade Brett Baty? It's a big overpay. The same fans that are saying it's an overpay were telling Met fans or telling the Mets to get rid of Brett Baty last year for basically a bag of balls. So it's not about what you think of Brett Baty at this point. It is the fact that David Stearns signed Bo Bichette. He signed Jorge Polanco. He traded for Marcus Semien. Nobody told him to bring in talent of more infielders, knowing that Brett Baty was going to be pushed away at third base. That is on David Stearns. That is on nobody else. So it's not about what me and you think. It's what David Stearns did this offseason to push Brett Baty out of third base. Brett Baty's not a first baseman. I'm not saying he can't do it, but are we really going to play this game with Jorge Polanco and Brett Baty platooning? Do we really need that right now? For a team that is a big question mark, make no mistake about it. I love the Freddy Peralta trade. I love the Luis Robert Jr. trade. I'm not mad about the Nimmo Semien trade. Polanco is a good signing. Couple of new bullpen arms. Understandable that there's a ton of questions here, right? Semien might not be the same offensive player ever again. We don't know what Polanco is going to do offensively. He'll probably be solid, but is he a big problem defensively? But here's the other problem. How do we know Brett Baty can play first base? How do we know we can play left field? Maybe he is just a second base, third base type of guy. And when people are like, well, Bo Bichette might opt out after this year. Well, that's true. But you can't worry about 2027 when 2026 is right in front of you and can be a huge problem. That is where you have to look at it when it comes to what should the Mets do with Brett Baty. Because honestly, I don't think Brett Baty is the type of guy that should be sitting on the bench and getting spot starts here and there. I think we should learn our lesson from last year and know these guys aren't good platooning or playing sporadically or not playing every day. They're not good at it. They've proved it multiple times. And the problem with that is that if you want to keep Brett Baty, then what are you doing with Mark Vientos? What are you doing with Jorge Polanco? Polanco's playing every day. If that's first base or DH, he's playing every day. So that leaves, what do you do with Vientos and Brett Baty? Somebody sitting on the bench. I'm pretty sure Jorge Polanco is not sitting on the bench. He's playing mostly every day. You didn't pay him that nice little contract for 2 years to sit on the bench. So the bench player is either going to be Brett Baty or Mark Vientos. That's the problem. I don't want these guys sitting on the bench. I don't think they're going to be good to sit on the bench. That is the issue that I continue to talk about last year that became a big problem. Now, the Mets kind of solved a little bit of their infield depth by trading Acuna, by trading Jet Williams. That alleviated the pressure a little bit. But there is still an issue of 3 guys that you see on your screen in Brett Baty, Mark Vientos, and Ronnie Mauricio. Everybody forgets about him, but he is a guy that was supposed to be out third baseman prior to him getting hurt in the Dominican Winter League in Ronnie Mauricio. I like Cody Bell. I'm looking at the comments. I like Brett Baty a lot, but I don't want him sitting on the bench. He's not playing over anybody. That's the problem. I do think the Mets are going to get a stopgap left fielder, or you can't play Brett Baty in left field if you're trying to give Carson Benge the job or give him an opportunity to win the job in spring training. What does that mean? That means the reps that Brett Baty should be getting in left field, he won't be getting because Carson Benge is going to be playing a lot. And with the WBC this year, spring training is cut short for a lot of players. So you don't have that month and a half of spring training like you normally have. You have Brett Baty maybe taking some fly balls, maybe playing some, reps in left field in, some type of like pickup game between, other minor leaguers and other minor leaguers on both sides in Port St. Lucie. Like, it's not good enough. We need game action. He needs to know what to do cutoff man wise. How do you read certain charts when it comes to playing certain positions who's never played left field before? There's a lot to go into that. And just because he found a way to do it at second base, it's a huge ball game when he goes to the infield or your life to play left field. Now, when it comes to first base, I think Brett Baty has the body type to do so. But the issue is here is that isn't Polanco or Vientos playing first base? Most likely Polanco. Okay, so let's just say, and I'm going to have my lineup a little bit later in the show and show you guys at this moment what I think the lineup should be. And it's interesting because I think it's kind of a problem. I truly think it's kind of a problem right now with somebody sitting on the bench. And I just don't like that. I really don't. And that is why I think why not get better in the bullpen, and Brett Baty could be used as an asset. But again, check out that video. I go a little bit more into detail about it and all that fun stuff as well, if you want to check out that video if you haven't already. So we keep on hearing that Carson Benge is a guy that is going to get a great opportunity to win the left field job out of spring training. We know David Stearns loves him a lot. There's a big reason why we traded Jet Williams. Was because Jet Williams has become more of a guy who's considered a utility guy, but he's mostly an outfielder at this point. And with Luis Robert Jr., with Juan Soto, and the possibility of Carson Benge, Jet Williams was kind of expendable. And you needed a top-line starter. You got one in Freddy Peralta. You had to do it. Understandable. So if Carson Benge is going to get the biggest opportunity to play left field, who is already an outfielder, as we know, what are we going to do with Brett Baty and Mark Vientos, right? I think because Acuna was traded for Luis Robert Jr., the Mets like Mark Vientos. And I'm not saying the Mets don't like Brett Baty, but I do think they like Mark Vientos and the possibility of his power in this lineup where he had a bad season, but he still hit 18 home runs in a very bad season. He's a guy that even if he's a little bit better than last year, he's a 20-plus home run guy. And that's probably very eye-opening to the Mets organization and why I think Mark Vientos is still here. So that begs the question again, if Polanco's going to play first every day and Vientos is going to DH, or they're going to be platooning back and forth, one day Polanco is going to DH, Vientos is going to play first, Brett Baty is sitting on the bench. And you also got Mauricio, where right now he might be another backup infielder, but strong possibility he can be in the minors. So that's another guy to consider. And Maya, I agree with you, Maya. I agree with you when it comes to Austin Hayes, but that doesn't leave a spot for Carson Benge. You see, you don't want to keep on putting a logjam with your organization, with your roster, because it makes it that much harder for Carlos Mendoza to get enough playing time for these guys. And we saw what happened last year when you try to get playing time for everybody on your roster, just because a lot of these guys are young, you fall into that category of making wrong decisions. And I think Carlos Mendoza had a rough time last year of making those decisions on who to play. And sometimes he didn't play the hot hand. He played the guy who hadn't played in 4 days. And it doesn't make sense. Do not give Carlos Mendoza a hard time with his roster. He needs to be very adamant of who's going to be in your starting lineup almost every day. Obviously, giving guy days off here and there, understandable. But there needs to be somewhat of a set lineup of who you know is going to be in the lineup every day. I don't want to have this platoon nonsense of lefty, righty, or who's hot today, who's hot tomorrow. It does not work. These guys are made to play every day. These guys are not veterans who are used to these roles. They're not at all. And by the way, if we watched anything about last year, when Brett Baty started to figure things out, he played every day. He played second. He played third. When Mark Vientos struggled, he stopped getting playing time. Ronnie Mauricio didn't get a start in a week last year. And then he came up in big spots in a pinch hit appearance, and he looked lost because they're not used to sitting on the bench and getting called upon when needed. They're just not fit for that, unfortunately. Mr. X, I understand that, but you don't want to give young players up, but it does not make sense to keep them on the bench. You're not getting them better. And it doesn't make sense to put them on the bench because they're not good at it. We should learn this lesson. That's why I just don't understand why people get upset, because you're talking about losing young players. It's not just about losing young players. You still got guys that everybody's talking about. You're talking about AJ Ewan in the farm system, who took a big step forward last year. Jacob Reimer, same thing. These guys are infielders. You got to make decisions on these guys. You can't just sit them in the minors and them killing AAA pitching. And you see the guys at the top with Vientos and Baty, and they're struggling. You can't sit there and let them lose games for you. It just doesn't make sense. You got to start realizing who is going to be here a long time. You got to make that decision. I always like veterans on the bench. They know their role. It suits them better. They know how to get prepared properly. A lot of these young kids nowadays in Major League Baseball, they have a hard time staying prepared when they're on the bench and they're not starting every day. That's a problem. Richard, I agree with you, but they're not doing it. The Mets aren't telling you that Brett Baty is going to play left field. They're giving Carson Benge to win the left field job. So that doesn't fare well for Brett Baty. That's what I'm saying. Like, this is not my opinion or my thought process. It is what David Stearns did this offseason that allowed the Brett Baty conversation to happen once again. Brett Baty was supposed to be the everyday third baseman, right? That was the idea. That was what Stearns talked about. But David Stearns made decisions this offseason on signing and trading guys to bring in for the infield that allowed the Brett Baty conversation to start happening again. That's not our fault or my fault. It is David Stearns who put this on Brett Baty now. Now Brett Baty is on the bench. Carson Benge is going to get every opportunity. I'd rather have Carson Benge get a bigger opportunity than Brett Baty in left field in spring training. You know why? Because he's actually an outfielder. And he doesn't have to worry about, oh my God, how do I, position myself in left field? He's played outfield. He understands it. Now all I got to see him do is use the bat. I don't need Brett Baty trying to figure out which way to move when the ball jumps off the bat because he's never played left field before. I don't need that from Waston. I don't need that to lose games for us. This team and the signings and the trades that David Stearns made is telling you that he's trying to contend this year. You can't be playing games or having guessing games of who's going to be okay in left field. You don't have time for that. And unfortunately, David Stearns made decisions based on his moves that pushed Brett Baty aside, who is now a bench player, along with Mark Vientos. And along, at the moment, with Ronnie Mauricio. So now they got to make a decision. Because are you going to keep Brett Baty and Mark Vientos on the bench? Which, honestly, doesn't make sense. I'm not platooning Brett Baty and Mark Vientos at DH. Brett Baty's a good defender. I don't want him just being a DH. Vientos should be the DH, but I don't like Polanco at first base either, and I don't trust Brett Baty to learn another position because he's not going to play every day. It doesn't make sense. So David Stearns allowed this decision and this problem to occur because David Stearns likes to have quantity over quality and doesn't realize that this is making Mendoza's job a lot more harder. Sorry, that's my phone. And that's the problem. And that is why I'm not upset, but it's common sense at this point. So it is up to the Mets to figure out, okay, who is going to help us longer term? Or put it this way, who is going to be a better bench player? Is it going to be Mark Vientos? Is it going to be Ronnie Mauricio? Or is it going to be Brett Baty? One of these guys, like somebody's going either to, well, at least Mauricio might go to the minors. And I don't like the fact that I'm thinking about Brett Baty being an asset in a trade. I like Brett Baty. I think Vientos has a good spot on this team now because of the fact that he can be a primary DH if Polanco's playing first base. But if that's the case, Brett Baty is on the bench. And once again, the New York Mets basically devalue him again. The guy wins the job last year after Vientos wasn't good and Acuna couldn't hold the job. And Baty, when he came back up, won a job. And now you had your offseason signings and trades and you pushed Brett Baty aside. I just don't understand that. And then Stearns talks about, the young kids and young guys, and we got to give the young talent a chance to play. But he signed veterans. He traded for veterans. So this is why when I talk about David Stearns, and I do like some of his moves, I'll give him credit for the Bo Bichette signing, for pivoting after Kyle Tucker, and I love the Freddy Peralta trade. But his issue here is saying one thing and doing another. That has been the problem with David Stearns. I'm not saying he has to tell us the truth all the time, but what do you think these players are thinking? All David Stearns talks about every time he speaks, this young talent we got to give them the opportunities to play. And then you sign Polanco, you trade for Simeon, you sign Bo Bichette, you trade for Luis Robert Jr. Okay, so your whole let's play the young kids thought process is not saying what you did with your actions by bringing in these guys. So unfortunately, Brett Baty is on the outskirts right now. And right now he's on the bench. And I don't want to see, you know what? We got to give Simeon a day or two off. Let's play Brett Baty. Great. So Brett Baty plays for 2 days. Let's say he plays well. He's sitting again because now it's Simeon back in the lineup. Same thing goes for DHing him or playing him at third, or wherever you want to play him. That is the problem. It just doesn't make sense. And let's see. But Crooklyn, it's not about knocking Stearns. How am I wrong? David Stearns put this problem together. He talked about Brett Baty being so good and love to see him be long-term in his roster. And I'm sorry with these damn calls. And talking about Brett Baty being the starting third baseman, and he does everything other than allowing Brett Baty to do that job. All his moves push Brett Baty out. So that's on David Stearns. That's not on me. I'm telling you what he did. This is reality. I know Met fans don't like reality sometimes, and they live in a little bubble, but a fact's a fact. David Stearns signed Polanco. He signed Bo Bichette. He traded for Marcus Simeon. That pushed Brett Baty aside. No matter what you think about Brett Baty, if you like him or not, Stearns pushed him to the bench. And everybody's like, Brett Baty's good. Yeah, as a starter, as we've seen him play every day. If he's sitting on the bench, he's probably not going to be good because he's proven he couldn't be good doing that. Same thing goes for Vientos. Vientos needs to play every day, and even if that's a DH, great. But that also pushes Brett Baty aside. Doesn't make sense. Now, the reason why I think Mauricio might be the best bet of being a role player at this point and being on the bench is because he's a switch hitter. He can play second. He can play short. He can play third. And he seems like the guy, and he has speed as well. So all assets of the game, the facets of the game, he can be good at. Brett Baty's not a speedster. Brett Baty can be good for defensive purposes, for sure. But are we taking that chance to leave him on the bench and see if he comes up at bat cold and seeing if he can perform? We don't have time to lose games. I think we should learn our lesson of what happened last year. Losing games in April are very important. And you can't be playing these games early parts of the season because you're trying things out. And all you're doing is making Mendoza's job harder. All right. But Crooklyn, liking the moves about the player is one thing. But making sense of the roster is another opinion and a conversation. I like Bo Bichette as a player. Why would I hate that signing? I like Freddy Peralta trade. I like the Luis Robert Jr. trade. But the Luis Robert Jr. trade has nothing to do with what Brett Baty has in store for this roster. That's the problem. That's the problem. So that's the problem. That's what I just don't understand. All right, let's see. Let's see what we got in the comments. All right. And Mothman, I don't care what Brett Baty does for another team, right? He hasn't hit 30 home runs with the Mets. That's his fault, right? He's failed more often than not, and that's on him. He had the third base job at one point. He lost it. Same thing goes for Acuna last year at second base. He lost the position. Vientos lost the third base job to Brett Baty. That's on those players. I'm sick and tired of waiting for these guys. These guys aren't here a year or a half a season. These guys have opportunities after opportunities. At some point, you got to say, you know what? Either you're going to be a part of this team and help this team, or your value, Brett Baty's value is not going to be as high as it is right now. And nobody can say as a bench player, Brett Baty is right now. He's going to be more impactful than a guy like Matt Brash from the Seattle Mariners, who had an under 3 ERA, pitched in 53 games. It could be one of the big pieces of your bullpen going forward. Who's going to be more important? A bench piece who's going to sporadically play, or a guy that can throw 50-something to 60 games a year in your bullpen and who's a damn good arm? Who's going to be more impactful? A bench player? Probably not. That's the problem. So just because I like the moves or like the players that David Stearns brought in, it didn't solve the roster issue. It actually makes it more difficult for Mendoza to manage. And you know what? At the end of the day, maybe that's harder. Maybe that's David Stearns wants, because I think he wants Mendoza to be on the chop. He's on the chopping block, but he wants another scapegoat. Because I love the lineup the way it looks. And I'm going to show you my projected lineup, and then we can discuss that, and we'll probably have difference of opinions, but that's fine. That's the beauty of the game. Well, BG, it's not serious Stearns derangement because the guy has never won nothing. All right. The Brewers, without David Stearns, has made the playoffs. So was it him, or is it just a philosophy? Right? They've choked in the playoffs time after time. And even their own fans, as Chris brought up on the last hot stove we have, who he has friends who are Brewers fans, that said, even though they had the best record last year, they knew they had no shot of making the World Series or even winning the World Series. That's the mentality you want as a fan, knowing that you're not going to be good enough, even though you make the playoffs every year, which the Brewers basically do. I mean, I'd love to have that problem making the playoffs every year, but that shit gets stale with every fan base if you don't win. All right? It's not Stearns derangement syndrome. It's the fact that David Stearns brought in guys to hurt his own young talent that he always talks about. So that's on David Stearns. Because all of a sudden, the Met fans that couldn't stand Brett Baty last year and want him to throw him to the wolves are the same ones complaining about, oh, Brett Baty's good. Yeah, well, David Stearns clearly didn't think so enough. And don't tell me that, oh, you're excited about him being a utility player when he was your starting third baseman 2 weeks ago. It's stupid. You're lying to everybody. Because there's no indication that Brett Baty can be a good utility guy and play in sporadically. Because when he did do that, he failed. So there is no facts or any proof that Brett Baty can do it. So now you're leaving a question mark on the bench in Brett Baty, who has talent, who's shown he can play, really good defensively, finally shown his offense last year, and now you sit him on the bench. So that's what David Stearns is. And you know what? I'm all for proven talent. I told you guys this. I take my proven talent every day of the week over young players. I've always said that. But David Stearns talks about the young players like these guys are playing every day, and most of them are not. Right? Where's all the Acuna fans? Where's the craziness for Acuna? Oh, that's it. Don't matter no more? Some people complain about Jet Williams. David Stearns thought otherwise. So again, what David Stearns says and his actions are two different things. But that doesn't mean the Mets can't play well. I think the lineup is deeper. I think this team can be good, actually, because we actually have starting pitching now that I like at the top of the rotation. You know, it's a lot easier to win ball games when you got Nolan McLean and Freddy Peralta than, you know, Kodai Senga and Shomanaya like you did last year to start the season. And now Shomanaya might not be in this rotation. He might be in the bullpen. And Kodai Senga is, you know, who knows? So the New York Mets are in a very weird situation, but that doesn't mean they can't be good. Because I think the starting 9 is fine. It's just there's other parts of the roster that's like, okay, Brett Baty was your starting third baseman 2 weeks ago, and now he's your bench player and utility man. Now you tell him, oh, let's play left field because, you know, that always works out. Like, we haven't learned our lessons throughout this so many years of this organization. Lord, I agree with you. Somebody has to be on the bench. But you can't put somebody who has failed in the past when he sat on the bench and get sporadic playing time. Crooklyn, I am not flip-flopping. You're hearing flip-flopping because that's what you like to do. And if you listen instead of trolling, you'll understand that it's not what I'm saying, it's what David Stearns is doing, and that's where people don't understand. People just assume, oh, well, Brett Baty's great. Yeah, when he plays, or really good, that's when he plays. That's the problem. And Mr. Exactly. It's not even just about Brett Baty being a bench player, and maybe he might succeed. Brett Baty's value is at his highest right now. And quickly, you can call me a flip-flopper all you want. I don't care. If I cared, I wouldn't have a channel. All right? But you don't listen, and you think I'm a flip-flopper. The fact of the matter is, I still don't trust David Stearns. Because all we're going to do is talk about this next year when everybody opts the fuck out. So that's going to be everybody else's problem. That's what he likes to do, having a new team every year. Then that's what he likes to do. And Ja, as I put in my video the other day, if you haven't checked out the video, please check it out. It was a trade for the Mets to get better in a field where they could always get better, and that is the bullpen. Some in the comments in that video said it's an overpay. I don't believe so. He's a very good reliever. He had one of the better seasons all year, considering in the reliever market. And Seattle matches up well because they need a third baseman. So that is why you have to look at it in a bigger picture. What is more important to this team? What's going to benefit this team to win more games? A role player that is a utility guy or bench player who's shown that he couldn't do it, not saying that he can't after maybe gaining some confidence, but who's going to help us? A guy who plays sporadically on the bench or a guy who's going to throw 50 to 60 games a year in the bullpen, who's had a couple of good seasons in a row? That is what you have to ask. Because the whole point is to win games. If Brett Baty's sitting on the bench and playing once every couple of days, is that helping us more than getting a good bullpen arm? It's a possibility, right? Strong possibility. So that is where we have to look at it. And sure, Swanson, you can always have injuries, but everybody forgets about Mauricio. Vientos is still on this team. AJ Ewan and Jacob Reimer are on the precipice of coming up. They're like right on the nose of being a guy that the Mets can call up. There's other guys that are infielders and played well last year that could be a possibility as well. And that is why when Stearns made these moves and brought in Bichette and Polanco and Simeon, well, especially Bichette, because Bichette was the last signing the Mets made when it came to a big addition, that took Brett Baty's job away. So what is David Stearns thinking about Brett Baty? Because all of a sudden he's hyping him up as this super utility guy, just like he did Jeff McNeil before he sent him to Sacramento. Not saying that that's going to be the case, but David Stearns don't hype up guys like that at all. And it gets me thinking, maybe David Stearns has other plans for Brett Baty. That's it. Put Vientos in left field. No. He's slow as shit. And he's already not a good glove anywhere. I don't want him in left field. That's a Lucas Duda all over again. I don't want to see that at all. But the value in, let's say, Vientos is that he can be a big power guy. We've seen it 2 years ago. And I think he would suit himself well as the everyday DH. Not this platoon shit that the Mets had to do or wanted to do ever since the DH has been implemented in the National League. That's the other problem. The Mets can't figure out the designated hitter at all. They had the luxury of having the best bet possible at a DH spot. They're basically giving you offense. And the Mets cannot figure it out since it's been implemented in the National League. So right now, DH Vientos every day. And if you're obsessed with Polanco playing first base, go right ahead. But don't tell me that super utility Brett Baty is going to play first and left field. That is the fucking dumbest thing I ever heard. The guy proved he can be a super utility or utility guy at second and third when you need him every day, when he was playing every day. Great. Why put more on the table? Now he has to think about other stuff when you probably need that bat in the lineup, especially on the back end of the lineup as well. Okay, Justice. Congratulations. You just always have fun for no reason. All right. Well, Dolo, it's not even about loyalty to players. I don't care about loyalty. But if everybody just, people puts the blinders on when it comes to David Stearns. Like, he'll tell you a whole story through the media and do the exact opposite. And for a guy who says he's supposed to be transparent with the fan base, he's full of shit. Go back in December during the winter meetings when, Alonso went elsewhere, Diaz signed elsewhere, trading Nimmo. All he talked about in every show he went on was about the young players. All he did was everything except that. And again, I'm happy about it because I like proven talent. I don't want to fuck with these prospects if they're not going to help this team to the level that I need them to perform. All right? I don't need them playing bad and taking a roster spot off a guy who could be better. I don't want to waste that time, but I know the Mets are going to do it, or at least with some guys. And it looks like Carson Benge is going to get the prime opportunity in left field. So for everybody who says, hey, Brett Baty in left field, then what are you doing with Carson Benge? If they think he's ready, then give him the opportunity to win the job in left field. Sam, I love the ace, but reality sets in about the roster. I could be happy with the moves, but still pay attention what they just did to Brett Baty. Nobody cares about that because they throw people to the side and acting like Brett Baty's just going to be on the bench and be fine. And then when he's not fine, you're going to bitch and complain like they always do. Meanwhile, yeah, okay, no Acuna, no Williams, right? Who are you going to put at third base? That's fine. You still got Vientos, right? Everybody loved him at third base, right? He got the starting job in 2025. Now nobody wants him, right? You got veterans that you can sign anywhere on the bench. I'd rather have a veteran that knows his place on this roster than a kid in Brett Baty that is trying to think to himself, how the fuck did I lose the third base job when I proved I can be the everyday third baseman last year? Like, that shit sets in. So, again, I'm not saying they're going to trade Brett Baty, but right now, Brett Baty has no place to play. Now he's on the bench, and you might be okay with that, and he might work out. But that's a big if. That's a huge if. Because they haven't done it yet. So we will see. But remember this. On January 26th, when I talk about Brett Baty, and this guy's still on the team, and he's not playing every day, and he's struggling. Remember I said that. Remember what I talked about. Because remember how everybody was so excited about the rotation last year, and everybody was like, oh, Rob, you're so wrong. And I'm wrong most of the time. I agree. I understand that. But sometimes the roster and the actions of your GM or your president of baseball ops, guess what? Is very up in the air and very all over the place. Everybody says I'm all over the place. Isn't David Stearns all over the place? Because these guys aren't going to get the playing time that everybody thought they were going to get, or even the players thought they were going to get. So that is the issue. No, Crooklyn, I like reality. And Met fans, they feather off sometimes. They fly away. Because their reality sometimes is thinking everything's okay. And just because you can like the Bo Bichette signing, you can like Marcus Semien, you can like the Polanco signing, you can love the Peralta trade, that's great. Well, meanwhile, then you know what? What if, right? There is always what if. But what if Brett Baty can't be a bench guy? Well, Teddy, what if Brett Baty hits? But where's he playing? Right? Easy, Brett Baty. The guy who was supposed to be the third baseman, and David Stearns loves the young guys and giving these opportunities, and then he signs and trades for all veterans. That guy. Yeah. What is he now? He is your bench player. And I find it hard to believe that once again, these idiots are going to platoon Baty and Vientos at DH. Well, Christopher, let me ask you. Why move Brett Baty to the left field when he's never played outfield and Carson Benge is already an outfielder? I'm not worried about Brett Baty's bat to put him in left field and God knows what he can do. I'd rather see Carson Benge. Well, meanwhile, why is Brett Baty last? I mean, that's your opinion, so that's what I'm trying to figure out. Like, who's last? I mean, Stearns already showed you that he doesn't want to trade Mark Vientos, because all those reports since the trade deadline about the White Sox wanting Mark Vientos for Luis Robert Jr. And Stearns worked his magic to not put Vientos in that deal. So every opportunity the Mets had to trade Mark Vientos, they did it. So just a simple fact of him still being here, David Stearns liked Mark Vientos. I don't know, with the moves that Stearns just made this offseason, tells me he's not that concerned about Brett Baty's value to this team. At least not enough. Well, easy. What's substantial? How much value do you think Baty has? Like, he doesn't have, let's trade Baty for Skubal. It's not that value, but you can bring in a very good reliever for Baty. These comments are fun. Yeah, Crooklyn, I agree with you there. I'm not DHing Robert Jr. He's too good defensively, and the bat right now is not good enough. Like, I trust Vientos to be the DH every day over Robert Jr. So, all right, let's see. Well, Teddy, he played an average second base last year, but it's not about second base. 2 weeks ago, he was a starting third baseman. So he would have been, but you got Bo Bichette, who's, by the way, moving to third base now. So who never played third base? He played shortstop and second base. So again, we'll see. Again, look, what I'm a big fan of Brett Baty. But people lose focus on what David Stearns did here to Brett Baty. Nobody cares about that because you hear about Bo Bichette. That's why. If it was somebody that nobody really liked or think is good enough, they would be bitching and moaning about Brett Baty being on the bench. But because it's Bo Bichette, you're not playing Brett Baty over Bo Bichette. That's obvious. That's and RW, exactly. It's a good point. Stearns talking up to increase trade value for Baty is still iffy. Sure, because Brett Baty is still a question mark, just like he was all the other times. Just because he played well. I mean, we watched Vientos become, a big question mark last year after his great 2024 season. So it's going to be interesting. Well, Sammy, we don't know. We don't know. See, people that keep on saying, oh, here we go again, is funny because did the Mets make the playoffs last year? Or did I just miss an entire season of playoffs? Right? Baty can still get 500 at-bats. Sure he can. But if Polanco's playing well, if Vientos is doing well at DH, where are you playing Brett Baty? Baty is not a left. Why do people want to put guys out of position when there's already guys playing out of position? You got Bo Bichette at third base. You got Jorge Polanco at first base. Now you want Brett Baty in left field over Carson Benge, which is not going to happen. What experience in left field? 1 or 2 games in the minor leagues? And Twist, I don't care if I'm unwatchable. I don't tell you to come on the channel. I don't force you to be here. You don't like my opinions. You don't have to like them. I don't have to like your opinions. But I bring up your comments because it's a conversation. But the fact that everybody just wants to throw Brett Baty to left field, act like it's going to be okay. Dolo, of course my fans are content with this lineup. They have no fucking choice. That's the other problem. But all of a sudden, everybody's a Brett Baty fan all of a sudden, which is the funniest thing ever because, again, Dolo, you've been on this channel a while. How many people wanted Brett Baty off this team in the middle of the season last year? Why put Brett Baty in left field, who is very inexperienced? Because why? Oh, now you like his bat? When you have Carson Benge, who David Stearns says is going to get a very good opportunity to play left field. And if Benge gets the opportunity in spring training, which he will, and wins the job, what are you sitting Carson Benge to play Brett Baty in left field? Are you guys nuts? Well, Dolo, exactly. Like, people forget. Brett Baty was sold for a bag of balls, according to most Met fans, in the middle of the season last year. Now they find, could we put a fourth outfielder? Maybe Brett Baty can be the fourth outfielder and play in between right and center. Like, come on, guys. Brett Baty got screwed once again, which I'm annoyed about. But that doesn't mean I don't like the Bo Bichette signing. You do that 10 times out of 10. But that puts Brett Baty. Yeah, but again, Crooklyn, we're talking about a fucking platoon again. Have you not watched the Mets long enough to know that ever since the DH has been implemented, they've tried the platoon every year. And every year, it's a complete and utter disaster. Our DHs are non-existent offensively. That can't happen. That can't happen. Stop with this platoon nonsense that has not worked, especially at DH. It doesn't work. We know Mark Vientos can hit lefties and righties. We're still not sure very much about Brett Baty against lefties. But I think he could do it. But platooning these guys doesn't make sense. It takes at-bats from each one of them that's shown when they don't get at-bats, they don't perform. Do we not watch these games? How many times the DH platoon has failed the Mets every year? Every year. The DH is non-existent offensively for the New York Mets. Constantly. The platoon doesn't work. It sounds great. It looks great on paper. Shit, Baty's against righties, Vientos against lefties. How can that go wrong? It always does. Because if Brett Baty gets the start 4 days in a row because there's a right-hander, who do you think is sitting on the bench for 4 days? Mark Vientos. Hey, Mark, day number 5, there's a lefty on the mound. Go out there, buddy. You have not played in 4 days, but hey, we're doing lefty-righty, and he strikes out 3 times. Haven't we seen that story before? Do we not learn our lessons? No, because David Stearns does this platoon nonsense that he always did throughout his career in Milwaukee and thinks it works. Well, Crooklyn, you're not going to go apeshit about the platoon. You know why? Because everybody sees it right now that it looks good on paper. And then when it fails, like it has been every year since the DH was implemented in the National League, and then it's Armageddon. Everybody complains. Now, RW, yeah, honestly, Ronnie Mauricio should be the DH. He's a switch hitter. It's perfect, right? Who needs a platoon? But we've seen Mark Vientos, at the very least, hit righties and lefties in 24. For whatever reason, he struggled last year. I don't know what it was. But because Vientos doesn't have a position defensively, it makes more sense to DH Mark Vientos. Brett Baty's glove is good enough, or it's solid, where I'd rather him on the field, but it's hard to play him over Bo Bichette. Maybe he'll get some time with Simeon at second base. Maybe. But they're not going to play Brett Baty in game 4 of the season. They're going to play Simeon as much as they possibly can. So it sucks because what you're doing is causing a platoon that doesn't work. Like the Mets were in on Schwarber as much as they not in enough. They were in on Schwarber. Why? Because that is a predominant DH who is a solidified DH. Brett Baty could be a DH, but then you sit Vientos down. If you want to do that, do that. Yeah, meanwhile, I don't want to do Brett Baty and Vientos to spring training for DH. See who wins it. You know why? Because that ended up being bullshit with Acuna and Baty at second base last year when Jeff McNeil got hurt in spring training. Brett Baty had a monster spring training, and day 1 in Houston because Framber Valdez was pitching on opening day. Luis Angel Acuna got the start over Brett Baty. So that goes out the window. And Richard, I hope it's a sophomore jinx for Vientos. But you know what? The sophomore jinx for Vientos lost his third base job. And now he's not really an everyday player unless he's the DH every day. So the sophomore jinx is pointless. So listen, I'm not saying everything needs to be perfect to open up the season, but you're making it harder to talk about these kids like Brett Baty and Vientos. Not really kids, but you know what I mean. Well, Stinger, that's the problem. Vientos value isn't really there because of his season last year. Brett Baty's value is higher. So Vientos, yeah, you might get a bullpen arm, but it's probably not going to be a good bullpen arm. Brett Baty, you probably can get a little bit more for. Truman, you're funny. But listen, the way I see it is that I want to see a DH who is there every day. It seems to work for other teams, but for the Mets, it's like, oh my God, how can we dare put the same batter up there every day to DH? But let's play this guy because he's a lefty. He might be a worse hitter, but he's facing a righty today. So it's like, it's silly. It doesn't work. Like, name me a time platooning at DH worked for the New York Mets. I mean, you want to go back to 2022? Like, I don't. Like, it was terrible. Then they did it the year after that. Then the year after that. And then they did it again. And it doesn't work. It's not enough at bats for guys that need at bats. Truman, I am happy about the moves. But people cover the issues that those moves made happen. Those moves caused issues with guys that should be playing, right? Okay, Wayne. Hey, Wayne, my coworker. Backman and Tuffle. Great. Let's go back to 86. Let's go back to the late 80s. Like, and that wasn't even a DH. Well, Chris, it does make sense. But can Mauricio do that? Because he struggled offensively. Like, he can't hit a breaking ball. We know he can't hit a fastball. He can't hit a breaking ball. And he's still not good right-handed. Good enough. So, yeah, you could try it. It kind of makes sense since he's a switch hitter, but hey. Well, meanwhile, whoever's hitting sits, yeah, but again, they don't look at it like that. Like analytics, and they say this all the time. Analytics doesn't work, or they don't use it for guys who are hot or cold. It's just analytics says, well, this righty bat should be in the lineup against this pitcher, even though the lefty that's in the lineup is going to be sitting who is red hot. They don't think of it that way. That is a gut feeling that a lot of managers don't use, or it's gone by the wayside. So that's why the platoons in this day and age don't work very well, in my opinion, especially when it comes to hitting. It doesn't work enough. And it hasn't worked with the Mets. Well, Stinger, that will solve a lot of problems, right? And then you really have to trade one of them. But look, it's crazy. But yeah, exactly. A switch hitter would be great. But Ronnie Mauricio is kind of behind Baty and Vientos at this point on the depth charts. I think everybody would agree with that, right? So to look at the lineup that I put together, as of right now, because, well, it's still not 100% determined yet, but it looks like this. Francisco Lindor leading off, playing shortstop. Bo Bichette batting second, third base. Juan Soto batting third, playing right field. Jorge Polanco cleaning up, playing first base. Mark Vientos at DH, batting fifth. Marcus Semien batting sixth, playing second base. Francisco Alvarez batting seventh, catching. Carson Bench playing left field, batting eighth. And Luis Robert Jr. batting ninth, playing center field. And with this, the reason why I like Bo Bichette number 2 is because he's a 300 guy. You got back-to-back guys in Juan Soto and Bo Bichette that are high average guys, probably the best averages in your lineup. I want them 2 and 3 because these guys put the bat on the ball. They don't strike out a ton. And Juan Soto did strike out more last year, but career-wise, he's not a big strikeout guy. Bo Bichette is not a big strikeout guy. So with Lindor being a leadoff guy, if he gets on, I'm very confident that either Bo Bichette or Juan Soto is going to put the bat on the ball and get things in motion before you get the other guys on your lineup coming up throughout the inning. That is what I like. I like Luis Robert Jr. in the 9-hole because of his speed. He's like a secondary leadoff hitter, right? We don't know how his bat's going to play yet, so I'm not putting them at the top of the lineup because I can't have a 220 hitter who is not a big on-base guy. He's okay on-base wise, but with his speed, I love him at the top of the order. But because I don't know if he's still going to be that 220 hitter. Now, if he gets his average up to 250, 260, all right, now we can have a conversation because that speed plays. But right now, you put him at the bottom of the lineup. You know, he works his way getting better offensively, maybe get that average up, get on that on base up a little bit more, get on base for the top of the order. I like Robert Jr. right now because we don't know how his bat's going to perform yet at the bottom of the order. Carson Benge in the 8th spot makes sense. Don't put a ton of pressure on him. Let him play left field. Let him get accustomed to big league pitching. Let's see if he performs. If he starts to perform well with the bat, you can jump him up at the lineup. See what you got to put around 6 or 7 or 5, 4, 5, 6 around that area as well. Jorge Polanco seems like I don't like him in a cleanup per se, but I can't trust Vientos yet. I'm not sure about Alvarez's bat. You know, if Vientos shows that his bat's come alive again, I have no problem putting Vientos cleanup and Polanco 5th. And I like Simeon in the 6th hole, the veteran guy, where I think he's going to have a bounce back season. But again, don't trust him enough to push him up there. I had Simeon batting 2nd prior to Bo Bichette signing. With Bo Bichette signing, I put Marcus Simeon to 6th. You know, you kind of break it up a little bit. I was trying to break up lefty righties in between like 4 through 6 or 4 through 7, but it kind of got hard at that point. I could see, you know, the Mets used to be lefty dominant and now they're kind of righty dominant, which is not the end of the world because right-handers see, you know, a lot of righties. So they're not, you know, completely different from like, or they're much different from what lefty hitters are, where some of them can't hit left-handed hitters or are not very good at it. So that's my lineup right now. I'm going to look at the comments real quick to see where people will change. Polanco, one I don't like. I don't think you should move Lindor out of the leadoff spot until he shows he can't do it anymore. Well, Truman, unfortunately, the Mets don't have big power guys anymore at this point. Like, you could put Juan Soto 4th, but I don't want Juan Soto batting cleanup. I don't. You know, you could put Bo Bichette 4th and Jorge Polanco 2nd, or, you know, in some version of that, but Dolo, exactly. If Robert Jr. comes back to at least somewhat of his old self, I put him right back at the top of the order. Right away. Because it plays perfectly. You can move everybody back. You can bat Lindor 2nd. Or you can put Soto 2nd, Lindor 3rd, and drop down the lineup a little bit more and it gets deeper. Well, Truman, you know, I wish that was the case. That would be more interesting than the cancellations of the streams. Unfortunately, because of the snow and I am down south, they don't know how to deal with it. And with power outages and me working, you know, more, it's crazy. So, like, I don't want to do a stream when there's a possibility or, you know, lights are flickering and the stream is, you know, the electric goes off or the power goes out. So I was trying to avoid that during the stream. So finally, everything looks good. Stream's on. So it worked out perfectly. Well, Christopher, again, I'm on board with you when it comes to not trusting prospects, but it's not what I believe. It's what David Stearns is saying. And he keeps saying that Carson Benge is going to get every opportunity to win the left field job. So I'm listening to what he says. But if you know anything about David Stearns, whatever he says doesn't matter because he does the exact opposite 99% of the time. But right now, I'll believe him with Carson Benge until he does something else. If he signs Hayes, Hayes is going to play in left field. So we still have to wait and see. Let's see quickly. What do you got? Bichette, Polanco, and Simeon all clutch hitters, which is what we've been missing. I agree. That's why I think it's deeper. Like quickly, I think you hear this all the time, right? Oh my God, the Mets don't have the power that they have. Well, they had power 1 through 4. 5 through 9, they had nothing. They had no good offense. They definitely didn't have power. But what this does, and like you just said, Polanco, Simeon, and Bichette, all are clutch hitters. And oh, by the way, Juan Soto has been one of the best clutch hitters in baseball his entire career. And Francisco Lindor has shown a thing or two in the playoffs and in big games to come up clutch. So you're talking about 1 through 4, or let's go 1 through 6. Let's move Vientos out of there, right? 1 through 6, you have 5 out of your 6 guys in the top of your lineup being clutch performers. And another reason why I like Simeon in the 6 hole is because I like Mark Vientos in front of him and Alvarez in back of him. I don't know why that sits well with me, but I like that veteran presence in the 6 hole with Simeon because I think that's going to help Vientos and Alvarez, if that makes any sense. Like I don't know if it will, but I like that veteran presence because it takes the pressure off of those 2 guys. Because again, Crooklyn just said it. Simeon's a clutch performer, even though in his later years offensively and not playing as well, he's still got good clutch numbers. Takes the pressure off Francisco Alvarez and Mark Vientos, in my opinion. So I like it. And again, right now I'm going with Carson Benge in left field because David Stearns said so. And again, action speaks louder than words, and the words of David Stearns means absolutely nothing, as we've learned over the last 2 months. And we'll see. Well, true. I do agree that Juan Soto in the 3 hole might not be great overall. But you know what? You want to walk Juan Soto? Because as Crooklyn just said, Polanco's clutch. And for everybody who just wants the 3-run home run, how about we start with getting hits with runners in scoring position? Wasn't that the problem last year with the New York Mets? The top 4 guys constantly got on base, hit a ton of home runs, yet they couldn't hit a single with runners in scoring position to save their goddamn lives. Pete Alonso was the best out of it last year, but even him had some down spells, even though he had the best season out of everybody with runners in scoring position. Here's what I know. You know who I trust with runners in scoring position? Polanco, Simeon, Bichette. You know why? Because they've proven it. Juan Soto as well. But you know what? If they want to play the games, because remember, last year, all they did was walk Juan Soto to get to Pete Alonso, and Pete Alonso had him, he burned him all the time. So let that happen again. If they want to walk Juan Soto and put somebody on base for Polanco who's clutch, great, do it. Do it. And you know what? Here's the other thing. Juan Soto third makes a lot of sense because guess what? Bo Bichette, 300 hitter. Guy who puts the bat on ball, constantly on base. You want to walk Juan Soto with somebody on base already? And here's Polanco, a clutch performer with 2 men on base? By all means, go ahead. Put the pressure on the pitcher. That's why I like it. All right. All right, let's see. And Dre, I agree with you, man. I said this 2 years ago. Shoot, I even said it. Let's just go back 1 year. At the trade deadline, I said this for a while. Luis Robert Jr. needs a change of scenery. I think he just got demoralized playing with the White Sox. The managers kind of treated him like a bum, and they didn't do a good job of what they were supposed to do. They were the worst team in baseball. I think Luis Robert Jr. is getting revitalized. I think he's going to have a great season. I think he's going to have a really good season. Now, I'm not saying 38 home runs like he did in 2023 and be an all-star type player. But I can see 25 home runs, 26 home runs. I think he can steal 40-something bases. Now, you got to keep him healthy because that has been his problem too. But I think some of those injuries were ghost injuries. Were fake injuries. Because as many times as we thought this guy was going to get traded it seems like he just didn't want to play for the White Sox. And I think, even if he had a little bit of an ankle injury and he could play through it, why do it? Why hurt yourself when your team can care less about you, number one, and they're terrible? You're not making a bigger difference to help this team win. So why not just sit out? And I don't advocate for that, but that's what I think his reasoning was. Oh, Dolo. Well, I agree with that with Diaz and Alonso. But let's be honest. If we would have got Diaz and Alonso, you can probably say bye-bye to Bo Bichette, in my opinion. So what is that doing? You're replacing Pete Alonso for Bo Bichette, or you're replacing Bo Bichette with Pete Alonso. So what is the big difference? Not much in the lineup, right? So now, putting Pete and Diaz with Bo Bichette and Polanco, Soto, and all these guys, yes, that would be great, but that wasn't going to happen. Bo Bichette became a possibility because Pete Alonso's not here, even though they played different positions. Like, that's a fact. So, but I think we could be honest here. 1 through 7, especially if you get I'm not even saying a great, but if you have a bounce back season of Alvarez being healthy and a guy that can hit 20 home runs easily, Vientos hit 18 home runs last year. Why can't he hit, even if he gets a little bit better, 22, 23 home runs? Like I said, there's a lot of ifs. 100% agree with that. And that scares me, right? Simeon might be done, but he might get rejuvenated, revitalized from going elsewhere. Apparently him and, what's his name? Seager kind of became toxic with each other. So maybe getting out of that environment is going to help him. Maybe ease up a little bit. He's not one of the main guys. Great. We'll see. And I think Polanco is a solid player. He's going to hit 20 home runs. I think he's going to be a good ball player for us. And I said this before and I say this again. Because Nolan McLean is here. Now, again, I said this before. Excuse me. And I'm coming over the flu that I had too. That I had a couple of days ago. We don't know if Nolan McLean's going to take a big step forward or a step back. I know people are brainwashed that he's not going to take a step back and he's just going to be great, which we all would love. But we all have to understand this is baseball. And just because you want it to happen doesn't mean it's going to happen. If Nolan McLean takes a big step forward, now we're talking about a 1-2 that is damn good. But even a little step back could be a problem for this team. But we do have a backup plan of Freddy Peralta. Why I wanted a top-line starter with Nolan McLean, because just in case Nolan McLean takes a little step back, now the league has a book on him. Just because we always see it. Don't I talk about this all the time every year? It takes basically a full season for teams to figure out what these guys do. They did it with Mark Vientos, and they're going to do it with Nolan McLean. They seen him all for the first time last year. Now they have a book on him. Now they can read. They have video of what he does in Major League games. Huge difference. You become a really good MLB player, and you stay in the majors by adjusting to what the teams do. Vientos failed last year. Nolan McLean can take a huge step forward, but that still is an if. 8 games don't decide anything. So right now, with Nolan McLean and Freddy Peralta, it looks good on paper. Excuse me. I already said this. Even with the Mets and the top 4 last year, hitting all these home runs, they have all these RBIs. Let's take away the win for a second, 83. They still weren't a great offensive team, average-wise, per game. I think if you score between 4.5 and 5 runs per ball game, and you actually have competent pitching at the top of your rotation, you're going to win more games. And that is what the Mets lacked last year, since the middle of May. They were losing games 7-8, 8-7, 7-6. I mean, the Mets pitcher was giving up 6.5 runs per game. I don't care who you have in your lineup. it's not sustainable for your offense to score that many runs to beat teams. 4.5 to 5 runs per game is perfectly fine. You'll be in the top 10. You'll be fine. The pitching is where it's got to get a little bit better, and I think it will with the addition of Freddy Peralta, with a full season of Nolan McLean, who I think is going to be good. We can talk about Clay Holmes, David Peterson, Sean Manaea, Kodai Senga, whatever you want. I think the Mets are going to pick up another pitcher. I take on Jose Quintana. He's an innings eater. He's a guy that can step back in the back of your rotation, who will do fine, not great. But I do think the Mets have enough of those. I would try for a Zach Gallen. I would still go after Framber Valdez. Tell me not. If Framber Valdez is a New York Met, having him, Peralta, and Nolan McLean 1, 2, 3, oh boy. Oh boy. That would be fun. That would be great. That's the fun part. And Framber Valdez is still out there. Maybe the Mets can jump in here. I don't know if the Mets are still looking for adding more tons of money on the payroll still, but it's looking more and more like Framber Valdez is going to take a short-term deal. If you can get him in here and give him an opt-out after the first year, that would be fun. Harrison Baty to the Giants. Is that official? Is that it? Is that what's going on? All right. Alrighty. Let's see. Meanwhile, I agree. Gallen didn't have a good season last year. But doesn't mean, again, Stearns has shown you he would get guys that haven't had good seasons last year. And, talk about the upside. So that's why Zach Gallen's a possibility, because he's probably going to get a one-year deal. Now, he does have a qualifying offer attached, which is for 1 year to give up draft picks is not something David Stearns is probably going to do. But we'll see. Framber Valdez, same thing. But maybe you can entice him with the short-term deal. He is a top-of-the-line starter. He's definitely a number 3, probably a number 2. And now you're talking about a rotation that is very damn good. And I do it. Let's go. 3 years, opt out after the first year, $40 million a year. Let's go. Go get Framber Valdez. So, guys, this is my projected lineup at this moment on January 26th. Obviously, if the Mets get a Eugenio Suarez or bring in somebody else, that could change by the time spring training comes. But once again, Lindor, Bichette, Soto, Polanco, Vientos, Simeon, Alvarez, Benge, and Robert Jr. If you notice, Brett Baty is on the bench. We talked about that for about 30 minutes in the beginning of the show. Why I think it's kind of dumb, but unfortunately, I'm not playing Brett Baty over Mark Vientos as the everyday DH. Brett Baty's too valuable with the glove, too good defensively to DH him only. With Baty DHing, that glove come off the table in defensive replacements late in the game. That's another thing that we didn't even bring up. Because Vientos is, let's say, the main infielder. Do you really want Vientos plugging in playing defensive replacement-wise? No. That's why Brett Baty looks like he can be the bench player, which I don't love, but that's what it is right now, and that's the reality at the moment. So, guys, with that said, if you tuned in after the live stream was over, let me know in the comments what you think about the lineup that I put together. Obviously, we're all going to have difference of opinions. Go back and watch the stream and talk about the lineup and why I put these guys in certain positions. With that said, guys, thank you for tuning in to another Mets Talk Live right around the channel and on X. And I'll see you next time, guys. If you haven't checked out my Brett Baty trade to the Seattle Mariners, check it out. Could be a good reliever coming our way if the Mets are willing to trade Brett Baty. Have a good night, guys. Enjoy the rest of your Monday, and I'll see you next time, guys. Have a good day.
Rob on the mic, spitting truth from the heights. Queens unite under stadium lights. Bright nights, 7 train rides. Dreams born in the real hum. Brooklyn to Queens, yeah, we all about that outcome. This our time, this our cheer. Mets talk loud, bring the hype, make it clear. From the boroughs to the field, this our year. Queens in the house, let the world here. From Flushing Meadows, echoes bounce off the bat. Rob calls, hit the mic, snaps like a thunderclap. Home runs over bridges, no